It began to affect my brain almost immediately. I could feel it coming, crawling into the cells.
Aren't there ever moments when you think as you used to think? When you're human?
Not often now, not often.
I'm a scientist. That's it. Think objectively. Analyze. Wait.
Welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi, where we journey through the many subgenres of science fiction on screen. I'm James.
And I'm Matt. This series, we're exploring the sci-fi subgenre of mad science. And in today's episode, we will be looking at scientists who are being driven mad by their science. Madness from the science.
They're going crazy again. These bloody mad scientists, they're at it again.
They're all a bit crazy, this series on the show, but these scientists are made all the more crazy by interacting with their own experiments.
In that case, do you think we're going to be driven even more crazy by interacting with these films over time?
Oh, I'm afraid so, James. I can already see it on your face when we record these.
Slowly going madder and madder as the series progresses. But in today's episode, we are looking at The Invisible Ray from 1936, and we are pairing that with Sam Raimi's dark action horror sci-fi Darkman from 1990.
Yes, Karloff and Lugosi together on screen in a mad science movie. How exciting. Two legends.
Yes, I don't think they've done many films together. I was trying to look into this after we picked this one, because we said at the end of the last episode that we didn't see much of Lugosi in The Island of Lost Souls, but we were hoping to see more of him in this one.
Yes.
And you do luckily see more of Lugosi, and you see a lot of Karloff.
Yes, there's no messing about in this. This is a proper pairing up of two iconic actors on screen. And also I was quite surprised by, well, just no makeup, no special makeup on them. They are Karloff and Lugosi. They are acting, they're playing humans together and, you know, playing off each other and interacting as real normal human beings. It was really great.
I wasn't expecting that as well, because I don't think I ever really thought about what these two actors looked like outside of their Universal characters.
Well, I think it's interesting to see Karloff, isn't it? Because he really does genuinely look like a normal man. But there's something in my brain that I can't turn off, that whenever I see Bela Lugosi, you know, not in like the makeup of the Beast Man in Island of Lost Souls, but when I see Bela Lugosi the man, my brain just goes, he looks like a vampire. Like I cannot. It's completely, you know, my rational brain understands it, but I can't step back from that and be like, that's Bela Lugosi. I just see him and I'm like, that's Dracula.
It's the accent as well,
yeah,
though,
absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
All of that. And they both give very different performances in this film we're going to be discussing, The Invisible Ray. But they had quite a complex professional relationship as well, because the public viewed them as rivals, obviously, because of the two Universal characters that they played, Frankenstein and Dracula. And it was really perpetuated in the media that they were like bitter rivals. But I think they were just very different people with different sort of career trajectories.
Stallone and Schwarzenegger of their day.
Wow, that is a great comparison. I've never thought about Karloff and Lugosi in those kind of terms, but it makes sense.
It's funny when the rivalry, I'm sure, is just, you know, cooked up by the papers and you know, to sell papers and sell movie tickets as well. But then where those things can trip over into the actual feelings that these people have for each other, and then it kind of ruins their relationships with each other.
And it was always quite a celebrated moment when these two joined each other on screen to act in films. I was looking up some of their previous films where they collaborated together on screen. Stuff like The Black Cat in 1934, which I think was their first pairing where they were both together on screen in a film. There was another film called The Body Snatcher, which was a Robert Louis Stevenson short story, which got turned into a film and sort of adapted. And in the trailer for that, to go into the kind of like personas that they had on screen. So they called Boris Karloff the hero of horror. And they said how the hero of horror joins forces with the master of menace, Bela Lugosi. So they're really kind of like putting them on different sides of the fence, aren't they?
Well, that's a very interesting couple of personas to have, because Karloff is no hero in this film, and Lugosi is not trying to be menacing. I think there's a case to be made for how much menace he exudes on screen, but it's not the intent in this film. They're not playing to those types, I guess.
No, and that's quite an interesting part of this one. And also, The Invisible Ray is, I think it's one of the, if not the only science fiction film that they both collaborated on.
Oh, brilliant.
There was Son of Frankenstein, but I think this is more true to the science fiction kind of roots and what we usually like to chat about on this podcast.
And it's absolutely it's a science fiction film, and it's a perfect mad science film as well, isn't it? You've got a crazy scheme to discover some scientific stuff. Should we just give a quick description of the plot?
So we're following this character of Dr. Rook, who is obsessed with this scientific discovery of this substance called Radium X. So at the beginning of the film, he's trying to track down where this Radium X is. And as the film progresses, he gets more and more obsessed with it and is poisoned by this Radium X. And it has quite an effect on him, to say the least.
This is the nebula in Andromeda. A ray from this nebula will be caught here and electrically transferred to the projector in my laboratory.
From Andromeda?
750,000 light years distant. I leave my secret with you. It is all there. More power than man has ever possessed. Power to heal. Power to destroy.
You're poisoned.
Poisoned. Everyone I touch is poisoned. They die.
If your men fail to capture him at the gate, then at midnight we bolt all doors and darken the entire house. His face and hands will appear like phosphorus.
And if he touches anyone,
they die.
You mentioned that he's trying to find the meteor. There's a whole kind of mad science prologue, isn't there? Like he's got a secluded castle in the middle of nowhere where he does his research, and he's being visited by a group of scientists that consider him, an outcast and a weirdo. And what's he doing? He's got a kind of telescope that allows him to view electromagnetic signals from deep in the past, which allows him to literally point it out to Andromeda and then see a meteor come from Andromeda to Earth 1 billion years ago, I think.
Yeah, he's like looking into the past, isn't he, via the cosmic rays that he can view with this telescope that he's got.
Do you know what it really reminded me of? Alex Garland's Devs. Where they're building they're using quantum computing to simulate the entire universe from beginning to end, and they can look at events from the past because they've got this quantum simulation of it. This idea that you can just sort of tap into the right electromagnetic frequency and see something that happened 1 billion years ago. It really reminded me of that. It's interesting that it's almost 100 years between those two ideas, fairly unrelated, I would say. I don't know what Garland's influences were, but they kind of come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, because at this point, cosmic rays were sort of the hot scientific topic. So they were discovered by Victor Hess in 1912, and he was on a balloon flight when he was measuring the ionization at higher altitudes of these particles. And again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know the complete ins and outs of cosmic rays. The most I know about cosmic rays are that they gave the Fantastic Four their powers.
Okay.
But it opened up this new field of research into sort of cosmic radiation and what that consists of, and how like atomic nuclei work and protons, and how they're all sort of like coming from cosmic events like supernova and all of this really like full-on stuff that was coming into sort of the scientific mainstream at that point. So having this prologue at the start talking about these cosmic rays, looking into the stars and trying to figure out what and how they can be used to benefit mankind is quite an interesting place for this film to start.
Yeah, and that balance between the benefits to mankind or characters seeking to apply their discoveries to the benefit of mankind kind of comes up throughout the film, but then it's always balanced with an element of threat. The same thing that can bring these incredible benefits can also be developed into a country-destroying weapon or an Earth-destroying weapon, if you so choose. It's got this limitless application either way.
And that's how science is viewed in most of these films,
Yeah.
isn't it? And just like sci-fi in general, it's the misuse of science, especially in these mad science films, how they can be used to, like you say, to benefit mankind or to destroy mankind.
Yeah, and a lot of these films that we've already talked about are about the duality of man and how you might use those applications depending on your disposition, I guess. And this one's not so much a like duality of man story, is it? You've got Dr. Is it Bennett or Benet, Bela Lugosi's character? Benet. Bela Lugosi's character. He's balanced out against Karloff's character in terms of what they want to do with the Radium X, and also what their kind of just general outlook on science, I guess, and their approach to it. But it's not so much a duality of man story, is it? They are two sides of a coin, but they don't have that sort of fundamental interlinking, certainly of a Jekyll and Hyde, or even, other characters where there's duality between the two.
It's the idea that both of these scientists are very passionate about science and reaching their goals and finding these new discoveries, but they have very different viewpoints on it. And you've got Rook, who is so obsessed by finding this Radium X and making this discovery and being the one who's done it, being the sole person who has discovered this, discovering this new element and putting it to good use. And then you've got Dr. Benet, who is actually kind of like the moral compass in this a bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's got his own desires for what he wants to do with the science, but he's constantly saying to Rook, look, we need to give this to the world so that we can make the world a better place and we can use it to help people rather than just like squirreling it away and doing all these experiments. We need to put it out there so more people can work on it and we can share that kind of new discovery and that new experience.
Yeah, it's a more a traditional scientific approach, isn't it? We need to report our findings to the scientific community. But more than that, I think he does have that moral compass that you're talking about, because you mentioned that Rook has ideas about how to benefit humanity, but that's not where his mind goes. I think he does do that eventually. He cures his mother's blindness, but the first thing he does once he properly harnesses it is to turn it into a weapon. He puts it into a kind of telescopic sort of object on a tripod, and not just turn it into a weapon, but immediately turns it into a weapon that he uses to threaten the native people who've been helping him on his expedition in Africa. He uses it to intimidate them when they want to leave by destroying a rock and basically saying, I'm going to zap you next if you don't stay and help me. Whereas as soon as Dr. Benet goes back to France, he's immediately putting it to medical applications and fixing cute little kids with whatever their ailments are. They do have very they go straight to their usage of it, and it's polar opposites.
And that's the title of the film, isn't it? The Invisible Ray. And it's how you can use this invisible ray in two different ways. You can either use it to be destructive, or you can use it to cure people of their ailments.
Yeah, I like this idea of this kind of vaguely alarmist panic. It's an invisible ray and it can do literally anything. It could be anywhere because you can't see it because it's invisible, and it could either blow you up or cure your blindness or whatever. It's just so vague and kind of feels like it would cause a moral panic kind of thing. Like, oh, what do these invisible rays do, Doctor?
And that to us today seems like such a foreign concept, that it could be both of these things, that it could be viewed as this medical marvel, but it could also be very destructive. But I didn't realize all of the stuff about radium that existed when it was first discovered and how people were using radium, because everybody now knows that radiation is bad, radioactive things are bad, but radium has this fascinating backstory, doesn't it, as to how people used it when it was first discovered by the Curies.
Yeah, it was used in all kinds of tonics and tinctures, wasn't it? And people were just imbibing radium infused water or tonics or whatever, or like rubbing it on themselves. I don't know. Like, it was incredibly popular as snake oil, essentially, right? Like just sold for as a cure-all for whatever ails you. Take some radium, take some poisonous liquid.
Radium was like that tonic that you would take to make you feel better. So people were taking doses of radium constantly. Like you say, they were having radium. They had radium sort of like water bottles, almost water jars, where they would put water in, they would get a bit of radium, and they would just be ingesting that constantly. But then also they made weird stuff with it. Like they made radium condoms, radium suppositories, all of these weird things that they just put radium in to be like, okay, this will help you perform better in bed. This will increase your sex drive. All of this weird stuff that they were just kind of peddling out with radium.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. It's kind of like we were looking at some videos to learn a little bit about this, and it really reminded me of Fallout. You know, the culture in Fallout that's radiation obsessed, but also, given the context of the story, they're radiation terrified as well. They're kind of treading both lines. But that kind of world where a radioactive world is kind of celebrated and radiation is king. I think Radiation King might even be the brand of like the TV sets or something. But it really put me in mind of Fallout. But it's just terrifying to think about as well. Like, there's something quite sickening in the pit of your stomach when you're like learning about these stories of people who are just like drinking radium infused water every day, and then years later they're, you know, suffering the horrible effects of that. Just, I don't know, just really turns my stomach. There's something quite physical about that.
Yeah, it does make you feel a bit icky. And you making the Fallout comparison is really great as well, because they would even, like, you know, in Fallout they've got they make it into like almost like a toy brand. Again, when I was looking for more stuff on radium, I went down a whole rabbit hole, and then I found out about this toy lab which got released in the 50s. It was called the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab. And this was a toy lab set that allowed children to create and watch nuclear and chemical reactions using radioactive materials. It didn't have radium in it per se, but it did have uranium ore samples, and there was like a low-level radiation in some of the materials used. It's just crazy to think that they were doing that kind of stuff in the 50s, and yeah, just giving kids, hey, guess what you can do? You can make these little atomic experiments in your room and keep yourself happy. And then you get this film in the 30s, which is talking about Radium X and how radiation can affect you and basically turn you into a crazy radioactive killing machine.
Yeah, because this is around the time, I think, that all of those radium victims would be, you know, their illness would be coming to fruition, I guess. It's kind of like Marie Curie, she was working on this end of the 1800s, I think, around that time. And then I guess it's going out to like the mid-30s, you're getting all the deaths and stuff, and the radium girls cases, the women that worked in the factories and stuff. I think that was kind of, it would have been recent memory, you know, when this film came out. So it feels very ripped from the headline sort of stuff. And calling it Radium X is, I don't know, it's just like unsubtle and ramping it up. Like, it's like radium, but worse, scarier.
And of course, Dr. Rook does find the Radium X in this film, and that's what gives him this radiation poisoning, which slowly poisons his brain. But we don't find that out until the end of the film. For a lot of it, you just think he's a bit of a bastard.
He does seem that way. I think that Bene might suggest that it might be a side effect when he first diagnoses him with it, and then they acknowledge it right at the end when they're kind of having their showdown, that it really has completely like corrupted his mind, and he can feel it worming its way into his brain, and it's completely taken away all his humanity, I think he says.
And he does get more sinister as the film goes on, doesn't he? Because, I mean, it's Boris Karloff, so he looks a little bit sinister in this anyway, just given his mannerisms and how he's sort of dressed and all this kind of stuff.
I thought he looked like Elliot Gould. I thought he was quite handsome.
He looks a bit like my granddad did, to be fair.
Is your granddad a menacing man?
Yeah, very menacing. He kept fish.
That's not menacing.
What a menace. But yeah, Karloff is slowly growing more and more mad throughout the film. And one of the things that does drive him mad is the fact that his wife is going around with this other guy. There's this sort of love triangle going on as well.
Yeah, we have yet another love triangle, but it's, one corner of the triangle is very much snapped off, isn't it? It's more of a love line. The relationship between Rook and his wife it's pretty DOA, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Diana does try. The character of Diana, played by Frances Drake, she tries to build that relationship back up, but Rook is just so obsessed with the science. At the point when she turns up to his camp, he's already just been infected by the Radium X, so he's trying to keep his distance from her.
Yeah.
But he's already withdrawn. He's withdrawn himself from society. He's become so obsessed with this discovery, with just learning more and more about this dangerous element, that he just can't focus on anything else. He's completely obsessed by it. And that's also, we haven't talked about what the foreword says at the start of the film. I thought this was very fitting for this, because it says, every scientific fact accepted today once burned as a fantastic fire in the mind of someone called Mad. And that's just a lovely sentence that epitomizes how these mad scientists think about their work.
Yeah, it kind of aggrandizes the role of the mad scientists in these movies, doesn't it? And it sets the film up in a bit of an unusual way, or causes a bit of a turn for the audience, doesn't it? Because that makes it sound like he's going to discover this amazing thing. Rook, in particular, he's the one who makes the discovery. But of course, he goes mad and he becomes, dangerous.
And he suddenly becomes this murderous killer, doesn't he? He's stalking all of his victims. He becomes obsessed with killing everyone who has been a part of this experiment, a part of this discovery, which he now thinks was taken away from him. Even though he's won a Nobel Prize for it, everybody knows that it was him who discovered it. It's just Benet and the rest of the scientists which were a part of it and part of the foundation that have since gone on to use this Radium X in different ways. But Rook is just so obsessed with the idea that something's been taken away from him, that it's been stolen, and he calls them thieves. So he becomes obsessed with getting his revenge on the rest of them.
Yeah, and he goes about this in a very grandiose, theatrical way. Real supervillain type stuff, isn't it? He rents out this lavish hotel where he can overlook the city of Paris, and he's got these 6 statues on a church that he hallucinates as being the 6 members of the expedition, and he's just zapping them one by one with his Radium X ray gun, whatever, each time he murders one of them. And also using it is very like supervillainy, isn't it? He's using his evil superpower of glow-in-the-dark death touch to wipe them out one by one.
That sounds like something that we talked about Dr. X in the last episode, the Action Man Dr.
X. Yeah.
Glow-in-the-dark death touch sounds like something he would have an action figure of.
He definitely would.
You could do.
Yeah.
That glow-in-the-dark death touch was a great special effect as well.
Yeah, it's a great special effect. I like the lingering palm that's left on the victim. That's a really cool image from the film. And it's always a gut punch. It's a dog that gets it first. It wasn't as upsetting as normally when a dog dies on screen, because I've never seen a dog just lay down. Like it's supposed to be dying, and it literally just lays down on all fours and then flops on its side, and he's like, "It's dead."
Just has to clarify, so we know it's not just gone to sleep, like it has in the previous scenes in the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they achieved that glow with luminous paint, apparently, that they would put on Karloff's face and hands. And then they filmed it under a black light to create this eerie, glowing effect. Okay,
well, I hope that paint didn't have radium or uranium in it, because I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they did it. I guess you would think by this point that's not what they do.
Well, yeah, that's what happened with the Radium Girls, isn't it? Because the Radium Girls were factory workers who were painting the watch dials to make them glow in the dark. and then that's how they got radium poisoning. So yeah, you'd hope that Karloff wasn't decking himself out in that kind of glow-in-the-dark radium paint.
I think if you buy an antique watch, like if it glows in the dark, it's likely that it still has active radium on its hands. You can buy they used to sell like uranium glass. Have you ever heard of that? It's green glassware that has uranium in it to make it green, and it will glow in the dark under a black light as well. And they pop up in antique shops and stuff as well. Like if you ever see if you're round your parents' house or your grandparents' house and you see some like green glass, if you've got access to a black light, like have a look. I think they are dangerous, but not like insanely dangerous. Please don't take my word for it. If you find anything that you think is uranium glass, please do look up, what you need to be doing about it. But it's all out there. It's still like floating around in antique shops and stuff.
Yeah, please don't write into us saying you suggested uranium glass. I've bought some.
I'm not suggesting uranium glass whatsoever. I'm suggesting
We're
you
not
check.
sponsored by uranium glass.
We're sponsored by Blacklights. Check everything. But yeah, all the radium girls, they're just working in factories and stuff and painting on the radium on watches, and then loads of them died from radium poisoning, and it's really a horrible story. So yeah, I hope it wasn't anything like that they were using on Karloff.
Yeah, you'd hope not. But he becomes a radioactive character, doesn't he, in this film? He has these almost superpowers from the radiation. It's not a great superpower, it's just a touch of death, or glow-in-the-dark death touch, as you called it. But there is a history of radioactive characters in sci-fi, and it made me think about the ones which kind of I know in popular culture, like the Toxic Crusader, like from all of those.
Is that radioactive waste that Toxie goes in? Yeah, right.
There's the Hulk, Hulk's gamma radiation.
Yeah. You mentioned Fantastic Four earlier. It's cosmic rays. I mean, that's radiation, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Spider-Man was a radioactive spider.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So a lot of Marvel superheroes have this radioactive trend. What gives you the power? Oh, it's radiation. There you go.
It's funny that stuff is persisting into the 40s, 50s, 60s when these characters are created, long after radium poisoning, is discovered as a thing.
It's because of the atomic age, though, isn't it? And as soon as they start creating like nuclear power plants and things like that, it becomes much more of it's just around more. And if you see like a nuclear power plant cropping up or something, you're like, oh, okay, this could be a real thing. And I've read all these stories about radiation poisoning. Let's hope I turn into a super powered superhero rather than get radiation poisoning and die.
Yeah, like Rook does in this film. So Rook's got some special medicine devised by Bennett that's kind of keeping him stable. He has to take that so many times a day, I can't remember, and that stops him from degrading. But he has this is a way out for him. It doesn't cure him, but he seems to have an unlimited supply of this medicine. He just needs to take it at regular intervals, and he'll be fine and normal, and he can live a happy life, enjoy his Nobel Prize, go back to his wife, all of this stuff. But it's also having this degrading effect on his mental state, coupled with, I think, some inherent just negative traits. He is a loner and a weirdo. His mum doesn't even think he should like leave his weird lab because he can't interact with anybody. Good. Yeah, he's just a weirdo. And he just gets incredibly jealous. So you've got this degrading of his mental state through the poisoning, coupled with, I think, some very negative personality traits that leads him down this dark path of the end of the film.
And you get this amazing sort of climax scene or climax act when Rook is wandering around in the rain and the dark in his kind of trench coat with his hat, trying to elude the people which are looking for him because all the scientists are after him. They figured out that he's the killer, even though he's faked his own death. He fakes his own death in a really grisly way. He just finds some guy in a market and then, from the sounds of it, just burns him to death.
Yeah. Butchers him,
puts his clothes,
Well, does he not just give him the glow-in-the-dark touch of death? But then he must mutilate the body as well.
Yeah. The newspaper report says that he was, like, burnt, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Death touch doesn't do that, but he's done, like I say, mutilated that body afterwards. He's gone to those kind of extremes. And again, you've got this kind of forensic science coming into play. Dr. Benet uses this special microscope to look into the eyes of one of the victims, and he sees that it was Rook who was the killer all along. And I love that moment. So I can't remember where I've seen that. I've seen that in another film. Listeners, if you can think of the film where that kind of thing happens, where you've got the eye of the victim shows you the killer in its last moments.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be in lots of stuff.
Yeah, I think we might have even seen one
We've
this
probably
series.
covered it.
Yeah, recording the last moments, yeah.
Yeah, so that element was great, but then you've got that final showdown when Rook is in the building trying to find Benet and find the rest of the scientists involved in stealing his grand discovery.
Yeah, the showdown between Lugosi and Karloff is amazing because it's all dialogue. You've got a Chekhov's gun, like Benet is roaming around with a pistol in his pocket, ready to kill Rook when he sees him, and then Rook comes in, and they just sort of talk it out a little bit, and then he goes for the gun. I just completely wasn't expecting Rook to kill Benet. He's built up as the kind of hero, right? He's the sensible, straight-laced scientist who wants to do good for humanity. And Rook just shows up and grabs him. I thought there was going to be like a glove, a special glove that he devised to protect himself. Ooh. Something, but no, unfortunately he just gets it. And then, yeah, basically Rook's mum turns up and tells him off, and that's his undoing.
I mean, that's every supervillain's undoing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's effective, isn't it?
Yeah, your mum turns up and says, "You've been a bad boy. Don't stop doing that."
And Mother Rook.
It works.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Mother Rook is an imposing figure, isn't she?
Yeah, he's very much a mummy's boy, isn't he, Rook?
Yeah, she's the only good that he does with Radium X, isn't she? He returns home and he shines the ray into her eyes and cures her blindness. And then he almost immediately goes on his murderous rampage. And that is the only, he talks about the possibility of using it for good or destroying countries. But the only practical thing he does, I think, is that, right? There's nothing else, is there?
No, that's it, isn't it? Because then he just becomes obsessed with killing everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, his mum was right. He should stay away from people, because if he just stayed away from people, then he would have been all right.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have worked out a lot better for him. She really did know best. And a stern talking to from her leads to him throwing himself out a window and exploding.
Yeah, because that's the other thing that Dr. Benet said earlier. He said, one day when the radiation medicine doesn't work, you'll just crumble into dust.
It's very dramatic, isn't it? That aerial shot of him leaping out of the window and just bursting.
Yeah, not before he said goodbye to his ex-wife, who is now married to this other guy, Ronald Drake, which has happened in between. So no wonder he's pretty defeated by the end of the film.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the other guy. We talked about the love triangle, but we didn't talk about the other love interest. He really reminded me of the news reporter from Dr. X last time.
Oh, you loved that guy, didn't you?
Yeah, he was nowhere near as annoying as that character, but there was a real element of what's he doing here? Why is he's not part, he doesn't feel like part of this fictional universe. What's his deal?
Just like a pretty boy who's a bit of an adventurer who just turns up for their trip to Africa and then steals Rook's wife.
Yeah. Well, we might as well admit we're in love.
Straight away.
Yeah.
He does not dilly-dally, does he? Yeah, he whisked her away, but then poor old Rook, after he's lost his wits. Well, he hasn't lost his wits. He's just gone mad.
No, he's as witful as ever. He's sneaky and using all his intelligence. Yeah, diabolical, absolutely. He is a diabolical villain, using all his intelligence for evil purposes.
I think the supervillain angle is the thing from this film that I hadn't really clocked until we discussed it today.
Yeah.
Because he is a supervillain. He's like an early supervillain with his invisible ray, with his murderous rampage. He can't be stopped. He's got the touch of death. All of that really builds him up as this villainous character. But the unfortunate thing is there's no hero to come and defeat him. even though they set up Benet as that kind of guy.
I would have liked more of Benet as a main character. In fact, I was saying how I really like Dr. X, and Dr. X could have had sequels and just apply that character to solving crimes. This is a perfect Dr. X story. Replace Benet with Dr. X, or just make more of Benet, basically, and have... Because, Lugosi's amazing. Both Karloff and Lugosi are amazing in the film. So I would have just liked more of him, and more of him as the main character who is really out to foil Rook.
And again, seeing them both go against their usual stereotypes a little bit. I mean, they're still playing horror characters, but with Lugosi being sort of this more moral character to Karloff's diabolical supervillain, I think it's a really good pairing in this film.
Yeah, I loved it. It was really, it was kind of corny, but in a very good way.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the ratings for this film do not do it justice. I was like, how has this not got more attention?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find as well. It hasn't got that... it just hasn't gone into the public consciousness as a classic in the same way as other films from the time, I think.
No, but I mean, with a back catalogue as large as Lugosi and Karloff's, there's a lot of films in there, and they were inundated with work during the Universal years after Frankenstein and Dracula. So no wonder films like this kind of went under the radar of a lot of people, because it's just flooded the market, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, we've talked supervillains, and we've talked about films maybe not getting their dues and flying under the radar a little bit. I don't know if that second part applies to this next film, but is that a good launching point to go into our second film today?
That's an amazing link, Matt. An amazing link. I'm ready to talk about the next film.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move on and let's talk about Sam Raimi's Darkman from 1990.
Cue really close up fast zoom.
Hi listeners, hope you're enjoying the show. If you want to support us and get access to hundreds of hours of bonus episodes, you can sign up to our Patreon.
We've got discussions on all the latest sci-fi films in cinemas, the Bad Movie Bunker, and Patrons' Picks, as well as mini-series covering your favourite franchises.
Patrons get to have their say on what we cover, both over on Patreon and right here on the main show too.
So if you want to join, head over to patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi.
Now, back to the episode.
Somewhere in the city, a brilliant scientist is on the verge of an amazing discovery.
The cells, they're holding. They're stable.
Finally, we can replace damaged skin tissue.
Then, they destroyed everything he had. All that he loved. Everything that he was. Now, crime has a new enemy. And justice has a brand new face.
I was afraid that you wouldn't want me anymore.
Of course I still want you.
The good news is that I know who's behind our little troubles of late.
He has the power to look like any man.
They're still both sons of witches!
But he is unlike any man.
I gotta tell you something about me. He's a cockroach.
In the darkest hour, there's a light that shines on every human being but one. From director Sam Raimi. Darkman.
Was this film a success, I guess, is my first question. Because for me, as a Sam Raimi fan, this flew under my radar, certainly.
Well, it was a commercial success. It grossed over 48 million worldwide, and it's become a bit of a cult hit afterwards. Considering it had a budget of 16 million and then it grossed 48, I think you can consider it a success.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, this passed me by. I love Sam Raimi. I'm a huge Evil Dead fan, and I like his recent stuff a lot as well.
And you love Spider-Man.
I love Spider-Man. So I just assumed I'd seen this, and it wasn't until I sat down to watch it for this that I just completely had it confused with the Alec Baldwin movie The Shadow. Which I have seen quite a few times, and I guess I thought Sam Raimi directed, and I think I have never seen this film before watching it for this.
I remember really liking The Shadow.
I love The Shadow, yeah.
I'd recorded it off the TV when I was a kid, and it was on my rotation of films that I would watch really early in the morning before I went to school.
Did you also watch The Phantom with Billy Zane?
Yes, that was in rotation as well.
Those two are great.
Yeah. This was the era of kind of comic books to screen that often gets sort of brushed under the carpet. But the 90s had lots of films like this, didn't it? So no wonder you got confused between The Shadow and Darkman. There's also Batman was out in 1989. Dick Tracy. Do you remember Dick Tracy in 1990? So it's like there was this abundance of all of these comics to screen. It's interesting as well you mentioned The Shadow because Raimi wanted to do an adaptation of The Shadow, but he couldn't get the rights to do it. So he either wanted to do The Shadow or Batman. They wouldn't let him. So he created his own superhero, super antagonist for this film so that he could do that kind of style of movie.
Yeah. I understand that. I think that's certainly why I confused it with The Shadow. Watching it, you can also see the Batman stuff as well. There is real crouching on rooftops between gargoyles moments and vigilante justice being doled out in incredibly violent ways and consistently ludicrous dialogue, like just people talking in the same way. People talking in asides as you would in a comic to explain what's going on to the audience, stuff like that really Sam Raimi just has such an innate understanding for the balance of the silliness and the fun without really turning his films into silly movies.
Yeah, because his style of filmmaking really lends itself to action, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
it's all very dynamic. Like I joked about in the link to this conversation, he does all these kind of like fast crash zooms, all of these crane shots, all of this kind of really interesting kinetic camera work that works in the same way as if you're reading a comic and you're going through the different panels. It's like the action, as you're following the action in there, they're all very dynamic and things are crashing through. You get booms and pows and cracks and wallops. And I feel like that's what Raimi does with his camera work.
Yeah, definitely. This film is covered in his trademarks, his trademark camera work. It looks amazing. It feels amazing. It's really exciting and fun to watch a Sam Raimi film. And I'm always amazed that he manages to do that. I remember being really impressed with that Doctor Strange movie that he made. Like, it wasn't the best film ever, but it was the first time I'd seen like a director's like stamp on an MCU film in a really long time. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. He always manages to like bring that out in his films.
And that is a talent, and that's like the auteur of someone like Sam Raimi, the fact he's able to do that. But he's also drawing on those inspirations of comic book inspired heroes, stuff like that. But he's also drawing on Universal films and Universal horror, which I find so interesting when looking at this film, because it is a mad science film. You've got this plot where you're following this character and his weird scientific invention, and he finds himself having to make use of that invention after getting into a big accident. There's more to the plot than that.
There's a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, but he's drawing from all of these things. So it's like all of these tortured scientists from the Universal films, like it's a little bit Frankenstein, it's a little bit Invisible Man. Well, I mean, it's quite a lot Invisible Man, actually, in terms of the sort of iconography and the bandages and things like that. It's got all of that. I think it's almost a little bit Invisible Ray as well, now thinking about it. Just some of the scenes when he's going around in the trench coat in the rain.
Yeah.
And the dark, stormy night of it all. I think all of that kind of stuff it's that Universal horror sci-fi stuff that it's drawing from.
Yeah, all of those influences. I think there's a lot of Frankenstein in there as well. You said not so much Frankenstein. I think obviously the bandages are Invisible Man inspired, but when we do see his flesh, it is, he is corpse-like. Maybe not immediately like the iconic Universal Karloff Frankenstein design, but there is something corpse-like about his features after his accident that does feel like Frankenstein. He's got kind of exposed open wounds on his face, and he's
Yeah, he's properly disfigured, isn't he, when you see what he looks like. and it's the makeup artist was Tony Gardner on this film. He was working on Neeson's iconic look, his disfigurement, his sort of burnt face. It took hours and hours, as you would expect, of preparation for him to get into this makeup, and then all of it was slightly different. And then if you add into that all of the sort of it's not plaster cast, but the face cast they had to get of different actors for the different masks that he wears. But that's getting into the actual film itself. What is the story of Darkman, Matt? What is happening in this film?
So Darkman follows Peyton Westlake, who is a scientist developing a synthetic skin. We talked synthetic skin last time. He's developing
synthetic flesh.
Yeah. He's developing a form of synthetic skin as a replacement, for people who need that for medical applications. When he is attacked in his lab by mobsters and seemingly killed, his lab is blown up, his partner is killed, and then he survives the explosion, is recovered in a wholly separate mad science lab, basically, as an interlude, and then goes on a quest of vengeance and romance to win back his fiance, I think, or to win back his girlfriend from the mob, and to take revenge on the people that did that to him.
And he uses this science that he's created, this synthetic flesh, to create masks of these mobsters to kind of infiltrate their ranks, and also to look normal so he can try and woo his girlfriend again. But there's more to it than just his facial appearance and his appearance in general. He's also lost all feeling in his body, so he doesn't feel pain anymore, and that has a psychological effect on him. So again, like Rook, he is slowly being driven mad by his science.
Yeah, very much so. Well, I wouldn't even say slowly. There's that incredible
it's
scene.
It's just immediate.
Yeah, where he's first kind of brought back from the brink by the doctors. We get this montage. We get the psychological process expressed through montage. So, lots of spinning. I think there's synapses or something, it's supposed to be synapses and images of his face and close-ups of his eyes widening as he breaks out of the restraints and then just immediately flees after we've been told that, he's going to feel less pain and be more emotional and prone to anger.
His flight or fight system is all scrambled as well, isn't it? So he's got super adrenaline powers. So he's suddenly a lot stronger than he ever was before. Like how they say if a parent sees their child under a car or something, could lift that car up with the maternal adrenaline rush that you get from that.
Right.
He's got it all the time.
Yeah, he's living in a kind of permanent state of that.
So the main science in this is this synthetic skin that he's creating. And again, whilst watching this, it got me thinking, can they make synthetic skin now? And can it be 3D printed like they do in this film? And there are quite a few advancements that are happening at the moment. They're looking into ways to 3D print skin. Everybody's got a 3D printer now. Not all of it can do this kind of sophisticated stuff, but they do have bioprinters that they're developing at the moment. So they can create layers of skin that closely resemble natural skin.
Oh, wow.
And they're making organs as well. That's sort of the next step. 3D printing organs. And then the way they can do that is they're taking genetic samples from people so that the bodies don't reject them in the same way. Because when you get an organ transplant, it depends on a lot of different variables, whether it will be compatible with your body.
Yeah.
But if they're 3D printing them and they're matching it with your sort of like gene samples, then chances are you don't reject it. But again, this is all sort of in the works at the moment. There are a lot more intelligent people than me doing this kind of thing. But it's interesting to see that sort of science is in the works, especially when you watch a film like this and you just go, wow, that's crazy. That's mad science. That will never actually happen. But when you think about it in real terms and you can see these kind of things being done, like they can grow skin in labs and all this kind of stuff now from healthy skin cells. It just does make you think, like, what we consider to be mad science now how long is it going to be mad and out there?
Yeah, well, there you go. All of Westlake's work is now within the realm. What did the title card of The Invisible Ray say about how science started?
Every scientific fact accepted today once burned as a fantastic fire in the mind of someone called Mad.
Beautiful.
Someone called Matt.
There you go. Just like Westlake himself, someone's seen as mad. Now it's a real thing, or it's on the way anyway.
But I mean, Liam Neeson in this is mad though. What's your favourite mad Neeson moment in this film?
Now there is one scene. So I just said I hadn't seen this film before, but there is one scene that I've seen on Twitter, completely divorced of any context, which is the entire fairground scene where he fails to, or he's not allowed to win the pink elephant for his girlfriend, and he just goes crazy. He just loses it on the carnival worker.
The pink elephant, please.
I'm sorry, buddy. It don't count unless you're behind the line.
Well, I was behind the line.
Not hard.
I was standing right here with my girlfriend. Now, the pink elephant, if you please.
No way.
Take it down. Take it. Take the fucking elephant.
I remember seeing that. I think I saw that like a year or two ago on Twitter, and I don't know if I even found out what film it was from. I was like, that's a weird Liam Neeson movie. But that's great. I mean, that's really just Sam Raimi having quite a lot of fun with it, isn't it?
Yeah, and Liam Neeson having fun with the voice as well.
I actually think Bruce Campbell might be doing some voice work there.
Is he?
I think Bruce Campbell might have done some ADR for this film, and there are moments when Liam Neeson is growling, where I think he sounds like Evil Ash from Evil Dead 2. So I do wonder if that is a little bit of Bruce Campbell coming in, particularly in that scene.
That would make sense because it just seems so unhinged. That would really give it that sense of, again, there's kind of like duality in this character. And having him have a different voice completely, that would really feed into all of that.
I think it does. I won't disagree with you, but I do wonder if Sam Raimi just brought Bruce Campbell in because he was like, I know someone who can do a really good crazy growl.
Quickly, wheel him in.
And he wanted Bruce Campbell to be Westlake in this, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, didn't he? But the studios wanted someone different. They didn't think he could do the serious role. Because obviously you've seen him do Evil Dead, and Evil Dead 2 was Raimi's last big film before this, and that had a very comedic tone to it. So if you're doing this kind of action horror and you've got the same actor, yeah, you can kind of see what the studios might have been thinking when they were like, get Neeson instead.
Neeson's very good in this, but I think it's a bit of a shame that it wasn't Bruce Campbell, because Bruce Campbell would have been incredible.
Definitely, he would have been great in this. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot in this Mad Science series is how the labs look. We didn't really talk about it in Invisible Ray, but again, Invisible Ray kind of has the gothic house on the hill.
That's probably the best lab, yeah. I also I did have the thought towards the end of the Invisible Ray when Benet is getting set up for his lecture that's going to lure in Rook. It did cross my mind that it just looked like, I kind of thought like, there must have been a big room at Universal that was just full to the brim of like mad science lab gear, because he walks through a room that's just like got every kind of test tube and beaker you could possibly have, those spiraling tubes, for distilling things. It was just full of them, but the camera just like breezes over it. It's not even a thing. It's not really part of the scene. And I just thought, oh yeah, they've just got so much of this crap sitting around in the Universal backlot in the 1930s. They just like grab a load of it for this movie. But yeah, Westlake has amazing labs, doesn't he?
Yeah, his lab at the start looks very clean. It's got all of this crazy tech. He's making all these 3D prints, all these virtual images, these holograms are popping up all over the place. And then it reflects his change as well, because it gets blown up like he gets blown up in the film.
Yeah.
But he continues to use it, doesn't he?
No, I think he goes somewhere else, doesn't he? He sets up shop in like an abandoned warehouse.
Yeah. So he gets all of the stuff from there. But even so, like, the warehouse is reflective of him, isn't it? Because it's a beaten up warehouse. He's using beaten up technology, but he's still getting it to work, and it suddenly becomes quite grimy.
Yeah.
And that really adds to the feel of it, because this science that he's doing is a little bit suspect, and there's different moral things coming into it. So it's not this clean cut for the benefit of mankind's lab that's been there before. Now it's this dark underbelly that he's in.
Yeah. His new lab is ragged and filthy and broken, just like he is in his quest for revenge. But it's a place that allows him to have a stage, isn't it? There's also like a Phantom of the Opera element to his character. He wears a mask, there's all that sort of stuff. But it's also like lurking on the fringes of society that he's doing, that he's set up sort of. I don't really know the geography of the film, but it feels like he's sort of on the outskirts of town. It's an abandoned warehouse. It feels very outskirtsy. That's where it feels like he's hanging out. So it gives him this space to be a little bit operatic and theatrical while he's doing his mad science.
And like the Phantom of the Opera, he's got this tragedy around his character. The fact that he can't be with his fiancée because of his physical changes and also his mental changes. He can't reunite with her because he considers himself to be grotesque. And he's also got a lot in common with all these universal monsters that you kind of view in a almost anti-hero way as things go on. Like when we talked about Frankenstein's creation, all of the tragedy around that and how he's misunderstood. And that kind of feels a bit like Westlake in this as he becomes Darkman. He is a tragic figure. He's had this terrible thing happen to him, and he's trying to get revenge on the people that did this to him. And you can identify with that because you want to be on his side. So he becomes this kind of anti-hero character.
Yeah, and he's on a very similar quest to Rook, but the people that have wronged him, you know, it's unambiguous that they have wronged him and they're baddies. So you can celebrate it a bit more and have fun with it. And again, it goes back to that sort of innate sense of treading the line of fun and silly in a Sam Raimi movie. You're just like, you're there all the way with Westlake. You want to see him lift someone through a manhole and, you know, threaten him with all the traffic above, all that stuff. He makes that feel fun, and it doesn't feel dirty and grimy, really, that you're supporting an unhinged, violent vigilante. Well, he's not even a vigilante. It's a very personal, you know, it's not even like he's enforcing his own sense of the law. It's just a personal quest for revenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and those moments you're talking about, like with the manhole scene, and also with the moment when he's being chased by Durant, and he looks like Durant at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
It's this kind of comic book action, though, isn't it? It's kind of goofy and fun, but it's also got a bit of high stakes to it because he is being chased and, like, you've got gangsters running after him with guns. So it's that hyper reality that fits into that comic book world, but it's still, like, it's fun action, isn't it? It's not that dark, gritty stuff that you get from some comic book films now.
Yeah.
Like, say, the Batman, all of that sort of Matt Reeves stuff.
Yeah.
This is more like it's Sam Raimi having a bit of fun with it and being sort of more fantastical in that way, because, yeah, like the manhole scene, it's hilarious as well as it's like gruesome. It's like, yeah. I found that really funny, and
it is funny.
It's all of that stuff that he's throwing into this that makes it a bit more.
Yeah, it's his other major influence. We talk, like, he's obviously very into comic books and he loves Universal monsters, and that's coming through. But he's also a massive fan of slapstick. He's a big Three Stooges fan. That's his other big love. People are always credited as Shemp or fake Shemp in the credits. Shemp was one of the Stooges, one of the later Stooges, I think. So I think Bruce Campbell is credited as final Shemp in this film. Shemp, Raimi uses it as someone who's standing in. So stand-ins, I think, are credited as Shemps, fake Shemps, because something to do with crediting Shemp's stand-in, I think, in the Stooges movies. So yeah, Campbell is credited as final Shemp. He just loves like goofy, silly stuff. That's Sam Raimi's whole thing, isn't it? And he's having a lot of fun with it. And he loves to do that stuff in his films. It's great to see.
But it's not all just goofy, funny stuff. There are some pretty insane stunts in this as well. Specifically, that helicopter scene.
Oh my God, yeah.
Dangling from the helicopter, and it's clearly a stuntman. Also, to make things easier, they've written into the script that Liam Neeson is actually looking like Liam Neeson now, rather than in all his makeup. So that probably makes that stunt a lot easier to do and to work out with the stunt guy.
Wait, why would it make it easier? Make it harder, wouldn't it? Why wouldn't you make your main character have all of his cosmetics on? Because then when you stick a stuntman in, he can just wear the Darkman makeup and it doesn't need to look like Liam Neeson.
If he's wearing makeup that takes like 4 hours to put on,
sure.
Then, and it's probably quite heavy as well. Yeah, they could have done it half-assed, I guess. But but yeah, either way, that helicopter scene is really impressive. And it's even more impressive because there's no CGI or anything like that. They've got I think they've used miniatures for some of the explosions and things like that.
There's a lot of blue screen as well.
Yeah, but man, that was great.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, being shot at. Everything's amped up to 11, isn't it? Durant is shooting at him with a grenade launcher from the helicopter, and then they're just swinging about through town, and then finally the helicopter just crashes into a bridge and explodes.
And then in the final scene, again, you've got that, you're ramping up the stakes by having them sort of tiptoeing around this scaffolding. You've got this massive drop. That's very sort of green screen, blue screens, whatever. But I really did feel tense watching that because it's at such a height and they're just sort of I don't know, just dancing about on these beams. And at any moment they could just drop, and they do. But yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. It's exciting stuff, James.
It's a very exciting film. How do you think it compares to Invisible Ray in terms of mad science then?
I like that it kind of sheds all the moral ambiguity. I think there is still an element of that in Peyton, the conflict of how he should approach life, I guess, as this newly changed person, and whether he should be with his girlfriend or not. But I don't know, it doesn't dwell on that stuff, does it? It's kind of, it's a revenge movie, and it gets straight into that revenge, and Sam Raimi wants the viewer to enjoy that revenge story, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And it's got, like you said at the start, it's got that amazing scene at the end where he's between those two gargoyles looking down from the heights of one of the buildings.
Yeah, very Batman.
Very Batman. Do you think Darkman is a good name for a superhero?
No. Yes. No. Yes, I do. I do think Darkman is a good name. I don't think it's a good name for Peyton Westlake's alter ego.
Yeah.
Because there's this setup at the beginning, and it's relevant throughout, that the synthetic skin doesn't last under daylight, and it will only last long. It'll run out after 99 minutes unless it's in the dark. And then the film doesn't really make anything of that until right at the end, where he says, "I gotta go. Call me Darkman."
That's a great Liam Neeson impression.
Thank you.
It's like he's here with me. Yeah, again, it's that it's got those comparisons to Invisible Ray in the way that, so Rook, you can see that he is the Invisible Ray. No, he's not. That'd be a terrible name for a superhero. You can see that he's got this death glow touch. I've forgotten what we called it already.
Glow in the dark.
Glow in the dark death touch. Yeah. So he's got that, and you can only see it when it's dark. Whereas Darkman has to be in the dark so people can see him in his synthetic skin.
Would they face off well?
I mean, one of them's very blatantly there in the dark.
Yeah.
And one of them just looks like a normal guy.
Well, yeah, one of them's at his stealthiest in the dark, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, it's the antagonist that we need.
Well, maybe he could have been the antagonist in one of the sequels. Have you seen either of the Darkman sequels? They made 2 more of these.
I have not, but I know they went direct to video, so I don't hold out too much hope for them. But they've got interesting titles, haven't they?
The third one has one of the best names of a film ever. Darkman 3, Die, Darkman, Die. Which, as Simpsons fans will know, is obviously German for The Darkman, The.
I mean, that one sounds great. And then in the second one, it's Return of Durant. So even though Durant dies in a massive explosion with a helicopter hitting a bridge, he's back in the second one, apparently.
Well, I can imagine he would come back and he would have use of Peyton's skin grafting technology, wouldn't he? I guess if he was injured from that crash, maybe that's his motivation there. And he's a good bad guy. I don't know if he's played by the same guy, but I'd like to see him come back.
Yeah, true. I think Sam Raimi distanced himself from those and Darkman in general afterwards. I think he wasn't entirely happy with how it all went.
Oh no!
But he did get like a lot of creative control over it. But as always with all of these things, directors have a different relationship to their work than fans.
That's such a shame. That's really sad to hear, because this was iconic Sam Raimi stuff for me when I was watching it. I was blown away, and just because I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it before, and I thought I'd seen it.
Because you're expecting The Shadow.
Yeah, exactly.
No Alec Baldwin in this one.
Alec Baldwin would have been a good Peyton Westlake, though. Don't want to keep recasting Liam Neeson in this film, but
Liam Neeson is the only Darkman for me.
What about Arnold Vosloo, the Mummy?
Ooh,
That's who plays him in the second one. I don't know if he came back for the third one.
What a world. But there you go. 2 films, both exploring mad scientists being driven mad by their science. What a mad episode, Matt.
I wonder if it's going to get any more mad next time, James.
Oh, who knows? In the meantime, thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of Journey Through Sci-Fi. Remember, you can subscribe to the show if you want to hear more. We are on all the different podcast apps, so please do if you want to keep up to date with the latest episodes.
You can also find us on social media, whatever social media you like to peruse. Come and have a look for us and follow us there. Or you can find our website at journeythroughsci-fi.com if you want to learn more about the show and find more episodes there.
And if you want a free and easy way to support the podcast, you can leave us a review. That always goes down a treat. It's a quick and easy way to help new listeners discover the show, so please do.
Or the best way to support our show is to come and visit patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi, where you can join to get bonus episodes and support the show.
Yes, lots of good stuff on our Patreon, and more good stuff coming your way next time here on Journey Through Sci-Fi, where we will be delving into another theme in our Mad Science series. And what films will we be looking at, Matt?
We will be watching Dr. Cyclops from 1940 and Downsizing, the Matt Damon movie from 2017.
Interesting. I've got a shrinking feeling about the next episode.
Okay, listeners, we will see you there.
Bye.